Chapter 1. The outcast rain drummed against the roof of the old cottage at the forest's edge, and Aurora Greyson thought once again that this monotonous beat was the only music that didn't cause her pain. She stood by the window with a cup of cooling tea in her hands, staring at the gray veil concealing the trees. 3 months had passed since the day her life shattered into pieces. 3 months since her banishment. "You're defective." Alpha Marcus's voice still echoed in her ears. "You're unworthy of bearing the name Silverfang. A she-wolf incapable of shifting is no wolf at all. You're a disgrace to the entire pack." 24 years she had lived among her kind, hoping that one day her gift would manifest. Others shifted for the first time at 16, some at 18. But she remained human. An ordinary, fragile human in a world of werewolves. Aurora took a sip of tea and grimaced. It had indeed gone cold. She turned toward the small kitchen of her sanctuary. This cottage had come to her from her grandmother, the human side of her family. The irony of fate. The only place where she could take shelter after banishment belonged to that part of her lineage the pack had always despised. "Well then, Aurora," she muttered under her breath, placing the cup in the sink. "Is today the day for a trip to town for supplies? Or do we continue surviving on canned goods and potatoes?" Over the past months, she had learned to talk to herself. Loneliness could drive one mad if you didn't find a way to fight it. Humor helped, even the dark kind. Aurora glanced at the clock. 3 in the afternoon. 4 hours until dark, maybe a bit more. Enough time to check the traps in the forest and gather some wild herbs. She made a living however she could, selling herbal tinctures and ointments in the neighboring town, sometimes working online editing texts. Not much, but enough to survive. Throwing on an old khaki jacket and slipping a knife into her pocket, anything could happen in the forest. Aurora stepped out into the rain. The drops were cold, October sharp, but she paid them no mind. Her body, though incapable of transformation, was still more resilient than an ordinary human's. At least something remained of her wolf blood. The forest greeted her with familiar silence. Aurora walked along the barely visible trail, navigating around familiar boulders and fallen trees. Here, among the pines and spruces, she felt calmer. Trees didn't judge. They didn't demand proof of strength or belonging. The first 2 traps were empty. The third as well. Aurora sighed, heading toward the last one. And then she heard it. A quiet moan, almost indistinguishable beneath the sound of rain. She froze, listening. The sound repeated, clearly coming from the left of the trail. Aurora turned, pushing aside wet branches, and stopped dead in her tracks. At the base of an old oak tree lay a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair plastered to his face by rain and blood. He was unconscious, his clothing, a black t-shirt and jeans, torn and soaked with blood. Deep wounds on his side and shoulder looked horrifying. "Oh God," Aurora whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. "What happened to you?" She carefully checked his pulse, weak but steady. Alive. Aurora quickly examined the wounds. Deep cuts, resembling claw marks. An animal attack? A bear? Though bears were rare in these woods. The man was massive, clearly over 200 pounds of pure muscle mass. How would she get him to the cottage? "Hey!" She gently patted his cheek. "Can you hear me? I need to get you somewhere safe, but you're too heavy. Can you walk if I help?" The man groaned, his eyelids fluttering. Aurora caught a glimpse of silver eyes, unusual, almost glowing in the forest twilight, before they closed again. "All right, plan B," she muttered to herself. The next hour became a true ordeal. Aurora dragged an old sled from the shed. With tremendous effort, rolled the unconscious man onto it. Thankfully, her strength inherited from wolf blood was greater than an ordinary human's. And then hauled it through the forest in the pouring rain, slipping in mud and stumbling over roots. "You know," she said breathlessly, though he couldn't hear her. "Usually, I wait until at least the third date before dragging someone to my place. But I'll make an exception for you. Only because you're bleeding out and might die if I leave you." When the cottage finally appeared between the trees, Aurora felt her muscles burning with exhaustion. Getting him inside proved to be a separate adventure, but she managed, settling him on the old couch by the fireplace. She quickly lit a fire, brought warm water, clean towels, and her first aid kit. Then, trying not to think about the awkwardness of the situation, she carefully cut away his wet, blood-soaked clothing and froze. His body was impressive. Defined muscles, a broad chest covered with scars from old wounds. This man clearly wasn't an ordinary tourist lost in the woods. He was a warrior, a fighter. But that didn't matter now. Now he was simply a wounded man in need of help. Aurora set to work. She cleaned the wounds with warm water, carefully examining each one. Strange, the cuts were deep, but the edges had already begun to knit together, faster than they should have for an ordinary human. "Maybe he just heals well," she thought, pushing away the odd feeling. She treated the wounds with antiseptic, applied a homemade ointment, and bandaged them tightly. In the process, her fingers touched his skin several times, and each time she felt a strange tingling, like a weak electrical current. Exhaustion, Aurora decided. "I'm just tired." When she finished, she covered him with a warm blanket and sat beside him, watching his face in the firelight. Even beaten and pale, he was strikingly handsome. Sharp features, a strong jaw, dark brows over closed eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. "And what happened to you?" No answer came. The man lay motionless, only his chest rising and falling steadily. Aurora sighed and stood. She needed to prepare broth. When he woke, he would need something light and nourishing, and brew herbal tea that would help with pain and inflammation. While she worked in the kitchen, her thoughts kept returning to the stranger. Deep down, something told her that his appearance would change everything, that her quiet, lonely life would never be the same again. She just didn't know how right she was. Chapter 2. Awakening Zane Nightshade, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, Lord of 5 major packs, and one of the most powerful werewolves on the continent, slowly returned to consciousness to the sounds of a crackling fireplace and the quiet humming of a woman's voice. Pain lanced through his body when he tried to move. Memories flooded back. The ambush, Marcus's men, silver dust on their claws, desperate flight through the forest, transformation back to human form to throw them off his trail, losing consciousness from pain and blood loss. And then, her face, chestnut hair, brown eyes with golden flecks, leaning over him with concern. Aurora Greyson. Zane carefully opened his eyes. He lay on a couch in a small, cozy living room. The fireplace warmed the space, darkness falling outside the window, meaning several hours had passed. His wounds had been professionally treated and bandaged, his body covered with a warm blanket. She had saved his life. Zane knew about her from the file. The banished daughter of the Silver Fang Pack, a she-wolf without the gift of shifting. He had studied her case while preparing to investigate Marcus's corruption. Her sudden banishment 3 months ago seemed suspicious, too cruel even for an alpha like Marcus. And now, fate had brought them together. Zane quickly assessed the situation. His sense of smell was weakened by the silver dust in his blood, but he could still catch her scent. Human, with a barely detectable trace of wolf blood. Very faint. Her wolf slept deeply, perhaps would never awaken, which meant she couldn't recognize his nature. To her, he was simply a wounded human. A plan quickly formed in his mind. This was an opportunity. Aurora might know something important about Marcus, about Silverfang. Information she wouldn't want to share with a werewolf, not after her pack had betrayed her. But with a human? With a wounded, helpless human she had saved? She might trust someone like that. Zane knew this was manipulation, knew it wasn't fair. But he had devoted 6 months to this investigation, and Marcus was close to spreading silver poison across the entire continent. The lives of thousands of werewolves were at stake. He couldn't let personal feelings stand in the way of duty, even if the voice deep in his consciousness whispered that he was making a mistake. "Oh, you're awake!" Aurora's voice made him turn his head. She stood in the kitchen doorway with a mug in her hands, her face expressing relief and concern simultaneously. "How are you feeling?" She quickly approached, set the mug on the side table, and leaned over, checking his forehead with the back of her hand. "You had a fever, but it seems to have broken. That's good. You scared me, you know. When I found you in the forest, you looked, well, let's just say, not great." Zane tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Only a rasp came out. "Oh, sorry." Aurora immediately lifted his head and brought the mug to his lips. "Drink slowly. It's herbal tea with honey. It'll help with the pain." The warm liquid burned his throat, but Zane gratefully took several sips. When Aurora removed the mug, he could finally speak. "Thank you." His voice was hoarse, weak. "You saved my life." "Don't thank me yet." Aurora sat on the edge of the couch, her lips curving into a small smile. "I haven't presented the bill yet. Saving a life doesn't come cheap these days, you know." Despite the pain, Zane felt the corners of his mouth lift. Humor? A good sign. It meant she wasn't afraid of him. "I'll work it off," he said, "as soon as I can stand." "Well, that'll take time." Aurora adjusted the blanket over him. "Your wounds are serious. What happened anyway? Did an animal attack you?" Zane hesitated only a moment. "I don't remember," he lied. "The last thing I remember, I was walking through the forest, and then pain and darkness, and then your face." It wasn't a complete lie, just selective truth. Aurora frowned. "Amnesia? That could be from blood loss or a head injury." She carefully felt his skull. "I don't feel any bumps, but that doesn't mean there's no concussion. What's your name? Do you at least remember that?" Zane hesitated again. His name was known in the werewolf world. If she ever heard it from someone in the pack. "Zane," he finally said. It was too late to invent a pseudonym, and the lie needed to be as close to the truth as possible to be convincing. "Just Zane. My last name? I don't remember." "Zane," she repeated, and his name sounded surprisingly, right from her lips. "All right, Zane. I'm Aurora Greyson. You're in my home on the edge of Silverpine Forest. You're safe here, I promise." Silverpine Forest. Territory bordering Silverfang lands. Exactly where he had planned to be. "Thank you, Aurora." Zane allowed himself to appear weak, vulnerable, which didn't require much acting ability. His body truly ached, and exhaustion pressed down with leaden weight. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me." "Died, most likely," she said bluntly, but there was warmth in her voice. "But let's not dwell on the grim stuff. You're alive, your wounds will heal, your memory will hopefully return. In the meantime, you're my guest. And as a guest, you must follow the house rules. No foolishness like trying to stand and walk before I allow it, mandatory food and medicine intake, and enduring my terrible humor, because I live alone and have gotten out of the habit of filtering what I say. Zane felt something warm spread through his chest. She was charming, funny and kind, despite everything she'd been through. Her file hadn't conveyed this. Dry facts couldn't describe the light in her eyes or the ease with which she joked. "Sounds like a fair deal," he said quietly. "Excellent." Aurora stood. "Then first item on the agenda, broth. I made chicken with vegetables. Nothing heavy, but nutritious. I figure you haven't eaten in at least a day." She left for the kitchen, and Zane closed his eyes, listening to the sounds of her working with pots. His plan was in motion. He would stay here, pretending to be a wounded man without memory. Would win her trust. Learn everything she knew about Marcus and Silver Fang. A simple, effective plan. So why did he feel like such a bastard? "Because you're using the kindness of a woman who's already suffered enough," the inner voice whispered. Zane forced himself to ignore it. The mission was more important. Thousands of lives were more important than his conscience. He repeated this to himself again and again, until Aurora returned with a plate of steaming broth and that smile that made something tighten in his chest. And somewhere deep inside, Zane understood he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But it was already too late to stop. Chapter 3. Days of Healing. A week had passed since Aurora brought Zane into her home, and life suddenly stopped feeling so lonely. She woke up in the mornings, came downstairs, and first thing checked how he was feeling. Zane was a remarkably stoic patient. He didn't complain about pain, though she saw him wince with movement, didn't fuss about food, though her culinary skills left much to be desired. "You know," she said now, changing his bandages, "your wounds are healing remarkably fast. For an ordinary person, this would be impossible. Are you sure you don't remember anything about your past? Maybe you're a superhero? Or participated in some medical experiments?" Zane, lying on the couch with his bare torso exposed while she worked, smirked weakly. "If I'm a superhero, then a very unlucky one. The superpower of being found bleeding out in the forest isn't particularly impressive." Aurora laughed, carefully applying fresh bandages. "Well, you have the superpower of making girls drag your carcass through the entire forest. That counts too." "Sorry about that." Sincerity rang in his voice. "It must have been difficult." "It's fine." Aurora secured the bandage and stepped back, assessing her work. "I'm stronger than I look. Genetics." She fell silent, her face clouding over for a moment. "Though there's not much use in that." Zane noticed the shift in her mood. "Something wrong?" "No, everything's fine," Aurora answered quickly, turning away. "Just old memories, doesn't matter. Are you hungry? I can make breakfast." "Aurora." Zane gently touched her hand, stopping her. "You can talk to me. I know we've only known each other a week, but you saved my life. You're taking care of me, even though I'm a complete stranger. That means a lot. And if you need to talk, I know how to listen." Aurora looked at him, and he saw the internal struggle in her eyes. Finally, she sighed and sat on the edge of the couch. "It's just, I was thinking about my old life, before I moved here." "You lived somewhere else?" Zane asked carefully, though he knew the answer perfectly well. "Yes." Aurora wrapped her arms around her knees. "In a commune, something like a large family, very closed off. They had special traditions, special rules, and I didn't fit in." Zane listened silently, feeling guilt gnaw at him from within. She was trying to tell him the truth without revealing the nature of the pack, protecting the secret of werewolves, even though they had betrayed her. "They banished me," Aurora continued, her voice growing quieter. "Said I was defective, that I was unworthy of being part of their family. And you know what the worst part is? I still miss them. Some of them. That's stupid, right?" "No." Zane covered her hand with his. "It's not stupid. It's human. Love doesn't disappear just because people hurt you." Aurora looked up at him, and he saw unshed tears in her eyes. "You understand. I don't know why, but you understand." "Because I'm lying to you every second," Zane thought, but said aloud. "Maybe I was banished from somewhere too. Maybe that's why my memory is blocked. Sometimes the brain protects us from too painful memories." It was a lie, but it helped Aurora smile. "Maybe, in that case, we're both outcasts." She squeezed his hand. "But you know what? Here now, I don't feel lonely, for the first time in 3 months." Something broke inside Zane in that moment. He looked at her, this strong, kind woman who had saved him despite her own pain, who was sharing her deepest wounds with him, and understood he was falling in love. It was wrong, catastrophically wrong. He was lying to her, using her. And when the truth came out, and it would inevitably come out, it would break her heart. But he couldn't help the feelings growing in his chest with each day spent beside her. "I don't feel lonely either," he said quietly, and it was the first real truth of the entire week. Aurora smiled, that very smile that lit up the entire room, and Zane knew he was doomed. Days flowed one after another, turning into familiar routine. Aurora woke early, prepared breakfast for both of them, changed Zane's bandages, and then left to check traps or gather herbs in the forest. Zane insisted she not change her life because of him, and Aurora, though reluctantly, agreed. When she returned, they had lunch together, and Zane discovered with pleasure that Aurora was a magnificent storyteller. She talked about books she read, about strange tourists she met in town, about the fox that had taken to stealing food from her traps. "I named her Bandit," she said with a laugh. "Every time I check the western trap, it's empty, but there are fox tracks all around. Clever girl. I even started leaving some food there especially for her." "You're feeding a thief?" Zane asked with a smile. "Well, I dragged a bleeding stranger out of the forest and led him into my home," Aurora countered. "I think my ability to make reasonable decisions has long been questionable." Zane laughed, truly laughed, and realized he couldn't remember the last time he felt so light. His life as Alpha King was an endless succession of duties, decisions, political games. Here, with Aurora, he could just be himself. Or rather, that version of himself he hadn't been in a long time. A simple man enjoying the company of a woman he liked. By the end of the second week, Zane could already walk, though still slowly. Aurora insisted on accompanying him on his first walk around the house. "I don't want you to fall and break something again," she explained, holding his elbow. "It took me 2 weeks to get you on your feet. I'm not starting all over again." "Yes, ma'am," Zane answered with a smirk. They slowly toured the house, and Zane studied every detail. A small but cozy living room with a fireplace. A tiny kitchen with wooden cabinets and an old but clean stove. The bathroom where Aurora had helped him wash up the first days, which was simultaneously pleasant and torturous. Her bedroom upstairs, which he only glimpsed briefly. A simple bed, bookshelves piled with books, a window overlooking the forest. "It's a small place," Aurora said with a slightly apologetic note, "but it's my home." "It's beautiful," Zane answered sincerely. "You can feel you in it. Warmth, light, life." Aurora blushed, and Zane discovered he liked causing that flush. You speak too well for someone with amnesia, she muttered. I'm sure in your past life you were a poet or novelist. An alpha king, Zane mentally corrected, but said aloud. Maybe, though I feel more like a warrior. My muscles remember movements, even if my mind doesn't remember the training. That was true. His body instinctively adopted combat stances. His hands knew how to clench into fists for striking. Aurora had seen this during one of his attempts to stretch, and he quickly explained it as muscle memory. Maybe you were a soldier, she suggested, or a bodyguard? You definitely have training. Possibly, Zane answered evasively. They returned to the living room, and Aurora helped him settle on the couch. You need to move more, she said. Muscles atrophy without activity. Tomorrow, if the weather allows, we can walk to the edge of the clearing. Not far, about 10 minutes. I'd like that. Zane caught her hand before she could pull away. Aurora, thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without you. She looked at him, and something warm, deep, flickered in her eyes. You're welcome, Zane. I'm glad I found you. Glad you're here. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and feelings. Zane saw how her gaze slid to his lips, how her breathing quickened. He knew he should pull away. Knew a kiss would only complicate everything, but he couldn't force himself to let go of her hand. Fortunately, or unfortunately, Aurora broke the moment, standing up abruptly. I need to check the ointment brewing in the kitchen, she said quickly, her cheeks flaming. And start making dinner. Do you like stew? Stupid question, you don't remember. Okay, I'll make stew. Rest. She practically ran to the kitchen, and Zane leaned back against the pillows, closing his eyes. What was he doing? He couldn't allow himself to have feelings for her. It wasn't fair to Aurora. Wasn't fair to the mission. He was supposed to maintain distance, gather information, prepare for the confrontation with Marcus. But each day spent beside her made it all harder. At dinner, Aurora was unusually quiet. Zane tried several times to start a conversation, but she answered in monosyllables, clearly lost in her thoughts. Did I say something wrong? He finally asked. Aurora looked up at him. What? No, you didn't, she sighed. Sorry, I'm just thinking about things that don't matter. Everything that troubles you matters, Zane said gently. Aurora was silent for a while, playing with the food on her plate. Can I ask you a strange question? She finally asked. Of course. Have you... She hesitated. Have you ever felt a connection with someone? So strong it scares you? Even if you barely know the person? Zane froze. She was talking about him, about them. Yes, he answered honestly. I have. Right now. Aurora met his gaze, and he saw in her eyes the same confusion, the same struggle he felt himself. That's crazy, right? She whispered. You've only been here 2 weeks. You don't even remember who you are. And I'm already... She didn't finish the sentence. Already what? Zane asked quietly, though he knew the answer. Wanted to hear it from her. Attached, Aurora admitted, looking away. Too attached. It's dangerous. When your memory returns, you'll leave. Go back to your life, and I'll be alone again. Zane stood, despite the protesting pain in his side, and approached her. He knelt beside her chair, making her look at him. Aurora. His voice was serious. I don't know what was in my past. Don't know what life awaits me when my memory returns. But I know one thing. What I feel for you is real. It's not amnesia, not gratitude for saving my life. It's... He touched her cheek. You. Just you. Zane. There was uncertainty and hope in her voice simultaneously. I don't want to leave, he continued, and it was true. The most honest thing he'd said to her in all these weeks. Even if my memory returns, even if I learn who I am, I don't want to lose this. You. Aurora studied his face, as if trying to read the truth in his eyes. Promise? She whispered. Zane knew he shouldn't make promises he couldn't keep. Knew that when she learned the truth, this promise would shatter. But he nodded anyway. I promise. And when Aurora leaned in, closing the distance between them, when their lips met in a tender, cautious kiss, Zane forgot everything. The mission, the duty, the lies he was weaving around her. In that moment, only the two of them existed. And Zane understood he was in love. Hopelessly, irrevocably in love with the woman he'd been lying to from the very beginning. Chapter 4. Confessions. The next few days felt like a dream. Zane and Aurora danced around their feelings, exchanging stolen glances, accidental touches that lasted just a bit longer than necessary. The kiss wasn't repeated, but the tension between them grew with each passing hour. Zane felt torn. Part of him, the alpha, the king, the leader, knew he needed to finish the mission. His wounds had nearly healed. The silver dust had left his system thanks to Aurora's ointments. He could shift, could return to the investigation. But another part, just a man who for the first time in years had felt a real connection with someone, didn't want to leave. Wanted to stay in this little cottage, in this sanctuary from the world, where he could be just Zane, not the Alpha King. What are you thinking about? Aurora's voice brought him back to reality. They sat on the house's porch, watching the sunset. The air was cool, October crisp, and Aurora had wrapped herself in a large sweater, leaning against his side. About you, Zane answered honestly. About how lucky I am that you found me. Aurora smiled. You know, sometimes I think it was fate. I almost never check that part of the forest where I found you. But that day something made me go there. Like some voice was whispering that I needed to go in that direction. Zane frowned. That was strange. Werewolves sometimes felt the call of destiny, especially when it concerned. No. He pushed the thought away. Aurora wasn't a werewolf. Not fully. Her wolf slept. She couldn't feel the mate bond. Could she? Zane? Aurora nudged his shoulder. You zoned out again. Everything okay? Yes, sorry. He smiled at her. Just thinking. Aurora, can I ask about that commune where you lived? He saw her tense. Why? Just, you said they banished you for not meeting their standards. I'm curious what those standards were. What kind of community could reject such an amazing woman? Aurora was silent for a long time, staring at the setting sun. They were special, she finally said. They had abilities I didn't have, and that made me defective in their eyes. What abilities? Zane asked carefully, though he knew the answer. Aurora turned to him, studying his face. If I tell you, you'll think I'm crazy. Try me. Zane took her hand. I promise not to run away screaming. Aurora took a deep breath. They were werewolves, shapeshifters, people who could transform into wolves. She said it quickly, like ripping off a bandage. Zane pretended to be surprised, though his heart beat faster. She had opened up to him, trusted him, and that made his lie even more despicable. Werewolves, he repeated, pretending to process the information. Like in legends? Not legends, Aurora said quietly. Reality. They exist, Zane, and I was supposed to be one of them. My mother was a werewolf, my father a half-blood. Their blood runs in my veins, but the gift never manifested. I can't shift. And so the pack, that's what they called themselves, decided I was useless. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. The Alpha said I was defective, that there was no place in the pack for those unable to shift. They banished me on my 24th birthday. Didn't even let me say goodbye to friends. Just threw me out like garbage. Zane pulled her to him, embracing her tightly. Anger boiled in his chest. Marcus. That bastard wasn't just trafficking silver poison. He was also abusing members of his own pack, rejecting them for things beyond their control. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You don't think I'm crazy? Aurora pulled back to look at him. You believe me? Zane should have continued pretending to be human. Should have said something like, it sounds incredible, but I believe you. Instead, he heard words escaping his lips. I know werewolves exist. Aurora blinked. What? Zane realized he stood at the edge of an abyss. He could step back, make up an explanation, or he could jump. He jumped. My memory? It didn't disappear, Aurora. I've been lying to you from the very beginning. He saw her face change, incomprehension, then shock, then pain. What? I remember everything, Zane continued, words pouring in a flood he could no longer stop. I know who I am. I've known from the start. I was pretending because... Because what? Aurora jumped up, backing away from him. You lied to me? This whole time? Please, let me explain. I saved your life. Pain and betrayal rang in her voice. I took care of you, trusted you, opened up to you. And you just used me? No! Zane stood, trying to approach, but Aurora backed away. Yes, initially I needed information, but then... Information? About what? Her eyes widened. About the pack? You were spying on the pack? Realization dawned on her face. Oh my God, you're one of them, aren't you? You're a werewolf. Yes, Zane admitted. There was no point in lying anymore. I'm a werewolf. Aurora, please, let me explain. Explain? She backed toward the door. What's there to explain? You pretended to be a wounded man without memory so I would what? Tell you about the pack? Betray some secrets? I'm investigating Alpha Marcus Gray's corruption, Zane said quickly. He's trafficking silver poison, Aurora, a substance that can kill werewolves. I'm trying to stop him, and yes, initially I thought you might know something useful. But you decided to worm your way into my soul first? Her voice trembled. Make me trust you? Kiss you? That was real. Zane took a step toward her. Aurora, everything I feel for you is real. Yes, I started with a lie, and that was wrong. But I fell in love with you. Truly. Aurora looked at him with such pain in her eyes that Zane's heart clenched. Who are you? She whispered. Who are you really? Zane took a deep breath. My name is Zane Nightshade. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The silence was deafening. Aurora stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Alpha King, she repeated in a tone devoid of emotion. You're one of the most powerful werewolves on the continent, and you pretended to be a helpless, wounded man. I was wounded, Zane weakly objected. That wasn't completely a lie. But it was enough, Aurora cut him off. Enough to make me believe a fiction. Enough to use me. I didn't use you. Then what were you doing, Zane? Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. Because to me it looks exactly like that. A powerful Alpha King who pretended to be weak to gain the trust of a pathetic outcast. Great plan. I bet you had a good laugh at the stupid girl who fell for your lies. It wasn't a lie. Zane grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. What's between us isn't a lie. Aurora, I fell in love with you. For the first time in so many years, I felt a connection with someone. A real connection. Let me go. Her voice was cold. Aurora, let me go. She wrenched herself from his hands. I want you to leave. Now. No. Zane shook his head. No, we need to talk. I need to explain. Explain what? That you lied to me about everything? That you used my kindness, my feelings for your investigation? She opened the door, pointing to the forest. Leave, Zane, or whatever your name really is. Just leave. Aurora, please! Leave! Her scream echoed in the forest silence. Zane stood, looking at her, at the tears on her cheeks, at the pain in her eyes, pain that he had caused. He could stay, could use his alpha power to force her to listen. But that would only make everything worse. He had caused her enough pain. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Aurora. He walked past her to the door, stopping at the threshold. I'll come back, he said quietly. When I figure out how to fix everything, I'll come back for you. Don't bother, Aurora answered coldly. I never want to see you again. Ever. Zane stepped out into the night, and the door slammed behind him. He heard Aurora lean against the door from inside, heard her quiet sobs tearing through the silence. Each sob was a knife in his heart. Zane walked away from the house, going deeper into the forest. When he was far enough away, he let the transformation wash over him. Bones shifted, his body changed, and in a moment where a man had stood was a massive dark gray wolf with silver eyes. He raised his muzzle to the moon and howled, a long, drawn-out sound full of pain and regret. He had found his mate, the woman his soul recognized as his own, and he had broken her heart with his lies. Zane ran through the forest, trying to escape the pain, the guilt, the memory of Aurora's tears. But they pursued him with every step. He had screwed up, catastrophically screwed up. And now he had to find a way to fix everything. Chapter 5. Return of the Past. Aurora spent the next few days in a fog of pain and betrayal. She didn't eat, barely slept, just sat by the window staring at the forest and trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Zane Nightshade, the Alpha King. She had heard of him, of course, even in the isolation of the pack. Rumors had reached her about the powerful Alpha who ruled the Northern Territories with an iron hand, but justly. They said he was invincible in battle, wise in politics, and merciless to enemies. And this man had pretended to be a helpless wounded man to use her. Part of Aurora, the rational part, understood his motives. If Marcus was really trafficking silver poison, it needed to be stopped. This substance was deadly not only to werewolves, but to humans accidentally exposed to it. But another part, the one that had opened her heart to Zane, felt only pain. She had trusted him, told him about her deepest wounds, kissed him, and all that time he had been lying. Idiot, she muttered to herself, sipping cold tea. Of course he couldn't be real. Good things don't happen to me. A knock at the door made her flinch. Her heart jumped. Zane? Had he returned? But when she opened the door, it wasn't Zane standing on the threshold. 3 men in expensive suits looked at her with cold smiles. Aurora recognized the tall blonde, Dave, one of the pack's senior warriors. The other 2 were unfamiliar. Aurora Greyson, Dave said, his smile not reaching his eyes. What a pleasant encounter. What are you doing here? Aurora asked coldly, keeping the door half open. I thought it was made clear. I'm banished. I don't belong here, remember? Oh, we remember, said one of the strangers, a stocky man with red hair. But you see, Alpha Marcus has changed his mind. He wants you to come back. Aurora blinked in surprise. What? Why? The Alpha isn't obligated to explain his decisions. Dave cut her off. Just pack your things. You're returning to the pack. No, Aurora said firmly. I won't return. You banished me. I'm no longer part of Silver Fang, and you have no power over me. Dave sighed, as if talking to a capricious child. Aurora, don't make this difficult. The Alpha wants to see you. Will you come voluntarily, or will we have to use force? Try it! Aurora stepped back into the house, grabbing a knife from the table. She knew it was pathetic protection against 3 adult werewolves, but she wasn't going to surrender without a fight. I won't return to Marcus. Never. Pity. Dave nodded to the other 2 men. Take her. They moved forward, and Aurora prepared to fight. But before they could cross the threshold, the air filled with a growl. Low, menacing, full of power. From behind the trees appeared a massive dark gray wolf with silver eyes. Zane. He stood between Aurora and the men from the pack, his fur bristling, fangs bared. The growl emanating from his chest was filled with alpha power, a primal authority impossible to resist. The 3 men froze. Even in human form, they felt the pressure of his aura. Leave, the voice sounded directly in their heads. Alpha telepathy, an ability accessible only to the most powerful. Now. You... Dave paled. You're Alpha King Nightshade. Leave before I change my mind about being merciful. Zane's mental voice rang out again, this time with clear threat. Dave looked at Aurora, then back at Zane. The calculation was simple. Even 3 against 1, they had no chance against the Alpha King, especially not on his territory. This isn't over, Dave hissed. Alpha Marcus won't back down. They turned and left, disappearing between the trees. Zane didn't move until their scent had completely vanished. Only then did he let the transformation wash over him. In a moment, instead of a wolf, stood a man. Are you okay? He asked. They didn't touch you? Aurora stood in the doorway, gripping the knife so tightly her knuckles were white. Her feelings were chaos, relief that he had come, anger at his betrayal, fear from the pack's visit, and something else. Something warm and frightening in her chest at the sight of him. I'm okay, she managed. They just arrived. Zane exhaled with relief. I sensed their scent when I was patrolling the perimeter. They violated the boundary of my territory. He paused. Your home is now under my protection, Aurora. I've marked the perimeter. No one from Silver Fang will dare approach without violating Alpha Law. You were patrolling? Aurora frowned. You've been nearby this whole time? Zane nodded. I couldn't go far, not when I knew you were in danger. He took a step toward her, and Aurora instinctively backed away. Pain flashed in his eyes. Aurora, we need to talk. About what Dave said. Marcus wants you back, and that's bad. Why? Aurora crossed her arms over her chest, maintaining distance. Why does he need me? I'm defective, remember? Useless to the pack. You're not defective, Zane said sharply, and never were. But as for Marcus... He ran a hand through his hair. May I come in? Aurora stepped back, leaving the door open in silent invitation. They sat at the kitchen table, the tension between them almost palpable. Tell me everything, Aurora said. And this time, the truth. The whole truth. Zane nodded. About a year ago, we started receiving reports about silver poison on the black market. This substance is lethal to werewolves. Even a small amount can kill an adult wolf in minutes. Production and distribution is strictly forbidden by alpha law. But someone broke the law, Aurora said quietly. Yes. We traced the source to this region, to territories bordering Silver Fang. All evidence pointed to Alpha Marcus Grey. Zane paused. I came here 6 months ago undercover, gathering evidence, and 3 weeks ago his men ambushed me. They knew I was coming. Someone warned them. And you thought it was me, Aurora finished. That's why you pretended. No. Zane shook his head. I knew about your banishment, read your file, knew you were unlikely to be working for Marcus. But I thought... He paused, clearly struggling with himself. I thought you might know something useful, something that would help me finish the investigation. That's why I didn't reveal myself right away. And won my trust with lies. Aurora's voice was even, but Zane heard the pain in it. Yes, and it was a mistake. A huge, unforgivable mistake. He extended his hand across the table, but stopped without touching her. Aurora, I didn't expect to fall in love with you. It wasn't part of the plan. But it happened, and now I don't know how to fix what I broke. Aurora looked at his hand, so close and so far away at the same time. Do you really mean that? She whispered. About falling in love? Every word, Zane answered seriously. Aurora, I've lived over 30 years, been with many women, but none of them made me feel what I feel with you. You're like light in darkness, like home after long wanderings. Tears glistened in Aurora's eyes. How do I know that's true? How do I know you're not lying again? Because I have no more reason to lie. Zane finally touched her hand, and she didn't pull away. I've told you everything. Who I am, why I came, what I did. Now you know everything about me, and I'm asking you to give me another chance. Aurora was silent for a long time, her fingers slightly squeezing his hand. I need time, she finally said. To think about all this, to understand if I can trust you again. I'll give you all the time you need. Zane nodded. But Aurora, Marcus won't leave you alone. I don't know why he wants you back, but it can't be anything good. I want to protect you, not as part of the mission, not out of duty, because you matter to me. I can take care of myself, Aurora objected. I know. I saw how you held that knife, ready to fight 3 werewolves. A faint smile touched Zane's lips. You're the bravest woman I know. But even the bravest sometimes need help. Aurora wanted to object, but sudden exhaustion overwhelmed her. The last few days had been draining, and the visit from Marcus's men had knocked out her last reserves. I'm tired, Zane, she said quietly. Tired of all of this, of the pain, the fear, the constant feeling that I'm not good enough. You're more than enough. Zane stood and walked around the table, dropping to his knees before her. Aurora, listen to me. The fact that your wolf hasn't awakened doesn't make you defective. It makes you unique, strong in your own way. You survived in a world that rejected you, built a life for yourself, saved the life of a stranger, though every reason was against it. You're amazing. Aurora looked at him through tears. Why do you say all the right things? Because they're true. He gently touched her cheek, wiping away a tear. And because I can't bear the thought of you considering yourself less than you are. Aurora covered his hand with hers. If I give you another chance, she said slowly. No lies, no secrets, complete honesty, even if telling the truth hurts. I promise, Zane answered without hesitation. And you'll explain everything about Marcus, why he wants me back, What's really happening? I'll tell you everything. Aurora took a deep breath. Then, stay, tonight, on the couch, she added quickly. I need time to get used to all of this, but stay. Relief flooded Zane's face. Thank you, Aurora. She nodded, suddenly aware of how close he was, how easy it would be to lean in and kiss him. No, too soon. The wound was still too fresh. Aurora pulled away and stood. I'll make dinner. You're probably hungry. Very, Zane admitted with a smile. While she cooked, they talked. About the investigation, about Marcus, about what his desire to bring Aurora back might mean. Zane told her about the silver poison, about the victims, about how dangerous the situation was. I have most of the evidence, he said. But I need something concrete that directly links Marcus to poison production. So far, it's all circumstantial. And you thought I might know something? Aurora asked. Possibly. Did you live in the Pack Manor? When she nodded, Zane continued. Then you might have heard or seen something unusual. Meetings that weren't talked about openly, strange visitors, anything? Aurora thought, remembering the last months before her banishment. There were strange things, she said slowly. Marcus became more secretive, held meetings in his office that no one was allowed to enter. Once I saw him talking with people in black suits, clearly not from the pack. They handed him a case. Silver, with some symbols. Zane tensed. Do you remember what symbols? Something like... Aurora took paper and drew. This. I don't know what it means. Zane looked at the drawing, and his face grew dark. That's the symbol of the Shadow Guild, an organization of werewolf hunters. He looked up at her. Aurora, if Marcus is working with them, this is worse than I thought. Why? Because the Shadow Guild doesn't just hunt werewolves. They kidnap them, use them for experiments. Zane stood, starting to pace the kitchen. And if Marcus is selling them not just poison, but werewolves from his own pack? Understanding dawned on Aurora. That's why he wants me back. I may not be able to shift, but werewolf blood flows in me. For experiments, that's valuable. Zane finished, his voice full of anger. Especially a rare case like yours. A sleeping wolf, but a human body with werewolf abilities. They could use you to understand how to suppress transformation in other werewolves. Aurora sank into a chair, feeling the room spin around her. He was going to sell me? Her voice trembled. Marcus was going to give me to hunters for experiments? Zane was instantly beside her, dropping to his knees and taking her ice-cold hands in his. I won't let that happen. His voice was firm, unwavering. Do you hear me, Aurora? I'd rather die than let anyone harm you. But you said the Shadow Guild is dangerous? And I'm more dangerous. Zane cut her off. I'm the Alpha King. I have resources, power, an entire army of wolves ready to fight at my command. And now that I know Marcus is working with the guild, I can act officially. This isn't just corruption. It's treason. Aurora looked at him, seeing determination in his silver eyes, and something else. Fury. The primal fury of an alpha whose mate is threatened. Mate? The thought flashed through her mind, and her heart skipped a beat. Zane, she began slowly, when you talked about your feelings for me, was it just falling in love or... She didn't finish the question, but Zane understood. The mate bond, he said quietly. I feel it. From the first moment I saw you, my wolf recognized you. Aurora held her breath. But I can't feel it. My wolf sleeps. I know. Pain flashed in his eyes. You may never feel the connection the way I do, and that's okay. I'm not asking you to. What if I want to? Aurora interrupted him. Try to feel it? Even if my wolf sleeps, I feel something for you, something strong. Maybe that's the bond? Just different? Zane froze. What do you mean? I don't know, Aurora admitted honestly. A few days ago, I wanted you to disappear from my life forever. But when I saw you today, protecting me, something clicked into place. Like a part of me I didn't realize I'd lost came back. Zane gently touched her face, his eyes searching hers for truth. Aurora, I don't want to pressure you. The mate bond is sacred. If you're not ready... I'm not saying I'm ready, she said quickly. I'm still angry with you. It still hurts from your lies. But... She covered his hand with hers. I want to try. To find out what it means, what we mean. The smile that lit up Zane's face was dazzling. I'll give you all the time in the world, he promised. We'll go at your pace, no pressure. Okay? Aurora smiled back, feeling something like hope for the first time in days. They finished dinner in a lighter atmosphere, talking about small things, favorite books, music, childhood memories. Zane told stories about his territories, about the wolves he ruled, and Aurora listened, enchanted by a world she knew so little about. Would you like to visit the Northern Court? Zane asked as they washed dishes. When all this is over, I mean. My residence is in the mountains. There's an amazing view. I've never left this region, Aurora admitted. The pack didn't allow me to travel. Said it was too dangerous for someone like me. For someone like you? Zane repeated with a smirk. You mean for a woman who saved the life of an alpha king by dragging him bleeding from the forest? Yes, definitely too weak for travel. Aurora nudged his shoulder, laughing. Shut up. You know what I mean. I do. Zane became more serious. And they were wrong. Aurora, you're stronger than most wolves I know. Not physically, maybe. But here. He touched her chest over her heart, where it really matters. Aurora felt warmth spread through her body from his touch. She looked at him, and the distance between them suddenly seemed too small and too large at the same time. Zane, she whispered. Yes? Kiss me. He froze, studying her face. Are you sure? Instead of answering, Aurora rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was slow, tender, full of unspoken promises. Zane's lips were warm and soft, moving with care as if she were fragile, precious. His hands settled on her waist, pulling her closer, but not insistently. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Apology accepted, Aurora said quietly. Zane laughed, pressing his forehead to hers. That was the best acceptance of an apology in my life. They stood like that for a while, simply enjoying the closeness. Then Aurora yawned, and Zane smiled. You need sleep. It's been a long day. Will you stay? On the couch, as agreed. Zane nodded. Aurora hesitated. Or, you could stay in my room. Just sleep, she added quickly, feeling herself blush. I'd feel calmer knowing you're nearby. Something warm and tender flashed in Zane's eyes. I'll be good. They went upstairs, and Aurora gave Zane an old pair of pajamas that had belonged to her father. They were small on him, but better than nothing. While he changed in the bathroom, Aurora climbed into bed, her heart beating faster with nerves and anticipation. When Zane returned, he stopped in the doorway. Are you sure about this? Yes. Aurora pulled back the blanket on the other side of the bed. Come here. Zane lay down beside her, leaving a decent distance between them, but Aurora moved closer, laying her head on his chest. His heartbeat was soothing beneath her ear. "Good night, Zane," she murmured, already drifting off to sleep. "Good night, my Aurora," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. It was the first night in 3 months that Aurora slept without nightmares. Chapter 6. Preparing for Battle. Aurora woke to warm sunlight streaming through the window and a sense of safety she hadn't felt in a very long time. She lay curled up against a warm, solid body, and for a moment forgot where she was. Then memories returned, and she realized she was in Zane's arms. During the night, they had moved closer to each other. His arm lay on her waist, holding her near, his breathing even and deep. Aurora allowed herself a moment to simply enjoy this. His warmth, his closeness, the feeling of belonging. "Good morning?" Zane's low voice sounded above her head, and she realized he was awake. "Good morning." Aurora lifted her head, meeting his silver eyes. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," Zane answered honestly. "And you?" "No nightmares." Aurora smiled. "First time since the banishment." Something warm flickered in Zane's eyes. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm glad to hear that." They lay like that for a few more minutes, just looking at each other, until Aurora's stomach let out a loud rumble. She laughed embarrassedly. "I guess that's a signal to get up and make breakfast." "Let me." Zane sat up. "You've done so much for me. My turn to take care of you." "You know how to cook?" Aurora asked doubtfully. "I'm an alpha king, not a helpless puppy," Zane answered with a smirk. "Of course I can cook, and quite well, actually." He wasn't lying. 20 minutes later, Aurora sat in the kitchen, enjoying a perfectly cooked omelet with vegetables, fresh toast, and aromatic coffee. "How did an alpha king learn to cook like this?" she asked between bites. "My mother insisted." Zane sat across from her with his own plate. "She said true strength is in self-sufficiency. An alpha must be able to survive without servants and subordinates, so she taught me to cook, clean, even sew." "You can sew?" Aurora couldn't suppress a laugh. "Don't laugh. It's a useful skill." Zane smiled, but then his face became more serious. "Aurora, we need to talk about the plan, about what to do with Marcus." Aurora set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. "What do you mean?" "Now that I know about Marcus's connection with the Shadow Guild, I can officially intervene. But for that, I need irrefutable evidence." Zane leaned forward. "That meeting you saw, with the people in black suits. Do you remember when it was?" "About 4 months ago," Aurora thought. "Yes, exactly. It was a month before my banishment." "And do you remember what was in that case they gave Marcus?" "No, I didn't see." Aurora shook her head. "But I heard one of them say something like, 'The samples are intact,' and Marcus answered that, 'The shipment will be ready by the next full moon.'" Zane tensed. "Shipment. He didn't say shipment of what?" "No, but—" Aurora suddenly fell silent, a memory surfacing. "Wait. A week before my banishment, several wolves from the pack disappeared. Young ones mostly, recently undergone their first transformation. Marcus said they ran away, joined other packs. But it was strange. They didn't take their belongings, didn't say goodbye to their families, just vanished." Fury distorted Zane's face. His eyes flashed gold, a sign that his wolf was close to the surface. "He was selling young wolves," he growled. "His own pack members. Children!" Aurora placed her hand on his, feeling him tremble with restrained rage. "Zane, calm down. We need a clear mind to stop him." Zane closed his eyes, taking several deep breaths. When he opened them again, the gold receded, though anger still smoldered in their depths. "Sorry," just the thought of what he was doing. Zane squeezed her hand. I need to infiltrate the Pack Manor. Find evidence, transaction records, contracts, anything that directly links Marcus to the guild. That's dangerous, Aurora objected. His men nearly killed you last time. Last time I was acting alone. Zane stood, starting to pace the kitchen. Now I can call in reinforcements. I have elite units ready to act at my command. How long will it take them to get here? A day, maybe 2. Marcus might come back for me sooner, Aurora said quietly. Zane stopped, turning to her. Then we need bait. What do you mean? You, Zane said directly. We use Marcus's desire to get you back. Make him think you're ready to return voluntarily if he explains why. That will give me the opportunity to infiltrate the manor while he's distracted with you. No, Aurora stood abruptly. Absolutely not. That's too dangerous. We have no other choice. There's always a choice. Aurora crossed her arms. And I won't let you use me as bait. If Marcus finds out it's a trap, he might. I'll be there. Zane cut her off, approaching and taking her by the shoulders. Every second, at the slightest sign of danger, I'll get you out, I promise. You can't promise that. Fear rang in Aurora's voice. What if something goes wrong? What if he... Then I'll die protecting you, Zane said simply. Because life without you isn't worth living. Aurora looked at him, seeing absolute sincerity in his eyes. You really mean that? She whispered. The mate bond? Is it that strong? Stronger than I could have imagined, Zane admitted. Aurora, I understand your fear, but if we don't stop Marcus now, how many more young wolves will he sell? How many more lives will be destroyed? Aurora knew he was right. Hated knowing it, but he was right. All right, she finally said. I'll do it, but with conditions. What conditions? You'll teach me to defend myself. Properly, not those basic moves I know. If I'm going into the lion's den, I want at least some chance of surviving if things go wrong. Zane hesitated, clearly not liking this idea. But then he nodded. Deal. We have a day before reinforcements arrive. I'll teach you everything I can in that time. And one more condition, Aurora added. When it's all over, when Marcus is stopped, you'll take me to the northern court. Show me your world. A smile lit up Zane's face. That's not even a condition. That's a promise I'll gladly make. He leaned down and kissed her, softly, tenderly, full of the promise of a future they would build together. When they pulled apart, Aurora smiled. Then let's start training. The faster I learn, the faster we can finish this and start our life. Our life, Zane repeated, and the words sounded like a prayer. I like how that sounds. They spent the rest of the day in the clearing behind the house. Zane taught Aurora basic self-defense techniques, how to use an opponent's weight against them, where to aim for maximum effect, how to break free from a hold. Aurora was a quick learner. Her body, though incapable of transformation, still possessed reflexes and strength inherited from wolf blood. By the end of the day, she could dodge most of Zane's attacks and even managed to knock him down a few times. Not bad, Zane said, lying on his back after a particularly successful throw. Are you sure your wolf is sleeping? Because those moves... Muscle memory, Aurora smirked, extending her hand to help him up. Or maybe just a good teacher. Zane took her hand, but instead of getting up, he pulled her down. Aurora cried out in surprise, landing on top of him. They lay face to face, her hands on either side of his head. Gotcha, he whispered with a mischievous smile. That's not fair, Aurora protested, but she was smiling. There's no fairness in battle. Zane brushed a strand of hair from her face. Remember that. His eyes darkened, his gaze falling to her lips. Aurora felt her breathing quicken, warmth spreading through her body. The distance between them decreased. A howl shattered the moment. Zane instantly sat up, lifting Aurora off him but holding her so she wouldn't fall. His eyes flashed gold, his entire body tensing. "What is it?" Aurora whispered. "My people?" Zane stood, helping her up. "They arrived early. Must have sensed the situation was critical." Wolves emerged from the forest. 5 massive beasts, each nearly the size of Zane in wolf form. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, their heads bowed in respect to their alpha. Zane stepped forward, and the air around him shimmered. The transformation took seconds, and where a man had stood, there was now a massive dark gray wolf with silver eyes. Aurora watched, breath held. Even knowing he was a werewolf, seeing the transformation was breathtaking and a little painful, reminding her of the gift she'd never had. Zane approached his people, and they began communicating. No sounds, just body postures, movements of ears and tails. Alpha telepathy, Aurora realized. He was talking to them in his mind. After a few minutes, Zane returned to her, human again. Fortunately, his clothing was made of that special material werewolves used. It transformed with him. "The news is bad," he said without preamble. "Marcus is planning an attack on this house, tomorrow at dawn. He's gathering the entire pack, about 40 wolves." Aurora paled. 40? Zane, there are only 6 of you? 8, he corrected. 2 more will arrive by midnight. And quality matters more than quantity. My warriors are elite. Each one is worth 10 ordinary wolves. But still, we need to change the plan, Zane agreed. Forget about bait. We'll evacuate you right now. My people will take you to the northern court where you'll be safe, and I'll stay here and finish with Marcus. No, Aurora said firmly. Aurora? I said no. She crossed her arms. I won't run while you risk your life. We're in this together. That's insane. Then we're both insane. Aurora stepped closer, looking him straight in the eyes. Zane, you said the mate bond makes it impossible to live without each other. Do you think I could sit peacefully in your court, knowing you're here fighting? That you might die? Her voice trembled, but she was firm. No, I'm staying, and together we'll stop Marcus. Zane looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the internal struggle in his eyes, the desire to protect her versus understanding that she was right. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met, he finally said, but there was pride in his voice. And that's exactly why you fell in love with me, Aurora countered with a smile. One of many reasons. Zane pulled her to him, kissing the top of her head. All right, you stay, but you'll follow my every order, understand? If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide. Agreed, Aurora nodded. But with one clarification, if I see you're in danger, I'll intervene. The mate bond works both ways. Zane wanted to object, but one of the wolves, a large reddish beast, approached and whined quietly. Zane turned to him, and Aurora saw his face become serious. What happened? She asked. Damon says he picked up the scent of silver dust in the forest. Zane answered. Marcus is preparing thoroughly. He knows I'm here. How? Good question. Zane frowned. There must be a traitor in my pack. Someone's informing Marcus of my movements. Or there's someone in his pack with special abilities, Aurora suggested. A tracker? A seer? Zane looked at her with interest. You know about werewolves' special abilities? A little, Aurora shrugged. My mother was a seer. She could sense the presence of other werewolves at a distance. Said it was like a radar in her head. Then we need to act faster than he expects, Zane decided. We won't wait for dawn. We'll attack tonight, before he gathers the entire pack. But we have fewer people. But we have the element of surprise. Zane turned to the wolves, and his voice filled with alpha authority. Damon, Marcus, Layla, you'll come with me to the manor. The rest will stay here protecting Aurora. If something goes wrong, take her to safety. That's an order. The wolves bowed their heads in agreement. Then 3 of them stepped aside, and the air shimmered around them. In a moment, instead of wolves stood 3 people, 2 men and a woman. So, the plan. Zane unrolled a map on the ground, and everyone gathered around. The pack manor is here, 5 kilometers north. The main entrance is guarded, but there's a service entrance on the east side. Layla, you'll infiltrate there, find Marcus's office, and gather all the evidence you can. Damon and Marcus will cover you. And you? Layla asked. I'll draw Marcus's attention. Zane's smile was predatory. Alpha against alpha. He won't be able to refuse the challenge. That's dangerous, Damon objected. Marcus won't fight fair. I know, Zane nodded. That's why you'll be on guard. At the first sign of treachery, intervene. Aurora listened as they discussed the details of the plan, and with each minute anxiety grew in her chest. This was too risky. Too much could go wrong. As if sensing her worry, Zane placed his hand on her shoulder. Everything will be fine, he said quietly. I promise. You can't promise that, Aurora whispered. I can. He turned her toward him, making her look into his eyes. Because I have a reason to return. You. And no Marcus will stand between me and my future with you. He kissed her, deeply, passionately, as if sealing a promise. When they pulled apart, Aurora saw that the others had tactfully turned away, giving them a moment of privacy. Come back to me, she whispered. In one piece. Always, Zane promised. Chapter 7. Battle for Truth Night descended on the forest quickly, as if nature itself was hastening events. Zane and his team prepared to move out, checking weapons, silver knives capable of wounding even werewolves, coordinating plans through mental link. Aurora watched from the window, her heart beating faster and faster. 3 wolves left to guard her positioned themselves around the house, 1 at the front door, 2 patrolling the perimeter. It's time. Zane approached her, already ready for battle. His clothing was black, practical, and fire burned in his eyes for the coming fight. Aurora hugged him tightly, breathing in his scent, forest, rain, and something purely masculine. Be careful, she whispered into his chest. I will. Zane kissed the top of her head, then lifted her chin, kissing her lips. I love you, Aurora. I want you to know that, whatever happens. Tears welled in her eyes. I love you too, she admitted, and it was true. Despite everything, the lies, the pain, the doubts, she loved him, completely, unconditionally. Zane smiled, that very smile that lit up his entire face, and kissed her once more. Then wait for me. I'll return, and we'll start our life together. He left, and Aurora watched through the window as 4 figures, 3 wolves and 1 man, disappeared into the forest darkness. The silence that fell after their departure was deafening. Aurora tried to distract herself, made tea, picked up a book, but the words blurred before her eyes. Her thoughts were with Zane, imagining him in battle, in danger. An hour passed, then 2. One of the guards, a gray wolf named Connor, suddenly raised his head, his ears alert. A second later came a howl, long, threatening. Aurora ran out onto the porch. What's happening? Connor transformed, a young man about 25 with a worried face. "They're coming," he said quickly. "Marcus's pack. Earlier than we expected. There are many. Too many." "How many?" Aurora's heart pounded. 20, maybe more." Connor was already transforming again. "Stay in the house. Don't come out, no matter what happens." He disappeared into the darkness, joining the 2 other guards. Aurora returned to the house, locked the door, and grabbed the knife Zane had given her for protection. Her hands trembled. Outside, battle began. Growling, howling, sounds of struggle. 3 against 20. They couldn't win, could only delay. "Zane!" Aurora called mentally, though she knew he couldn't hear her. "Please, come quickly." The living room window shattered, and a massive brown wolf burst inside. Aurora cried out, jumping back and raising the knife. The wolf transformed, and before her stood a middle-aged man with a cruel face. "Aurora Greyson," he said with a cold smile. "Alpha Marcus requires your presence." "Tell Marcus to go to hell," Aurora spat, her fear turning to anger. The man laughed. "Such bravery. Pity it won't save you." He stepped forward, and Aurora threw the knife. Her training with Zane paid off. The blade sank straight into the man's shoulder. He roared in pain, grabbing at the wound. Aurora didn't wait. She bolted for the back door, running out into the night. She needed to reach the forest, hide. But her path was blocked by another wolf, and another, and another. They surrounded her, slowly tightening the ring. Aurora spun, looking for an exit, but there was none. "Enough games!" A voice sounded from the darkness, and a man emerged from the shadows. Tall, gray-haired, with an aura of power. Marcus Grey himself. "Alpha," Aurora greeted coldly. "Former outcast," Marcus replied with mockery. "You've caused me much trouble, Aurora. First refused to return voluntarily, then got involved with Nightshade. Very foolish." "Zane will stop you," Aurora said firmly. "Nightshade?" Marcus laughed. "My dear child, Nightshade is currently occupied. I sent most of the pack to the manor, a trap, specially for him. While he fights there, I'll take what I came for." Fear pierced Aurora. You knew he was coming." "Of course. My seer sensed his presence days ago." Marcus took a step closer. "I was waiting for the right moment, and now it's come." "Why do you need me?" Aurora spat. "What can I, unable to shift, give you?" Marcus smiled, and there was something predatory, frightening in that smile. "You're special, Aurora. You don't even understand how much. A werewolf who cannot shift, but carries full wolf blood. The Shadow Guild will pay a fortune for such a unique specimen." "I'm not a thing," Aurora growled. "No," Marcus agreed. "You're merchandise, very valuable merchandise, and now you'll come with me voluntarily, or my people will force you." Aurora surveyed the wolves surrounding her. There were too many. She couldn't fight them all, but she could try. "Never!" She hissed and lunged forward, aiming for the weakest point in the ring. She almost broke through. Almost. A strong hand grabbed her, throwing her to the ground. Pain exploded in her shoulder when she hit a rock. "Foolish girl," Marcus growled, standing over her. "You thought you could escape? From me?" He nodded to one of the wolves, and the beast transformed, pulling a syringe with clear liquid from a bag. "What is that?" Aurora whispered, trying to crawl away. "Sedative," Marcus answered indifferently. "Specially developed for werewolves. You'll sleep until morning, and when you wake, you'll be far from here." "No!" Aurora tried to resist, but hands held her firmly. The needle approached her skin, and suddenly the world exploded with growling. A massive dark gray wolf flew into the circle of werewolves with the fury of a hurricane. Its fangs sank into the throat of the one holding the syringe. The man didn't even have time to scream. Zane. He had come. Behind him followed Damon, Layla, and Marcus Jr., crashing into Marcus Sr.'s pack. The battle was fierce, bloody, chaotic. Zane fought like a demon, protecting Aurora, not letting anyone approach. His movements were deadly, precise, merciless. Marcus Sr. transformed, a massive light gray wolf with scars from old battles. He lunged at Zane, and two alphas clashed in mortal combat. Aurora watched, unable to move, as the two most powerful wolves in the region fought for dominance. Zane was faster, stronger, but Marcus was craftier, more experienced. Marcus's claws left a deep wound on Zane's side. Blood sprayed onto the ground. "No!" A scream tore from Aurora's throat, and something clicked inside her. Pain, incredible pain, spread through her entire body. Bones shifted, broke, restructured, skin covered with fur. Her body changed. For the first time in 24 years, Aurora felt the call of the moon. Her wolf awakened. The transformation was agonizing, uncontrolled. The first shift always was. But when the pain finally receded, Aurora stood on 4 paws, looking at the world through wolf eyes. She was beautiful, chestnut-colored fur with golden highlights, sleek and fast. Not as large as other wolves, but graceful, deadly, and very, very angry. Aurora lunged forward, aiming for Marcus. Her fangs sank into his hind leg, making him howl in pain and loosen his grip on Zane. Zane seized the moment. His fangs found Marcus's throat, clamping with force that made the silver fang alpha wheeze. "Surrender!" Zane's mental voice rang out to all werewolves present. "Surrender or die." Marcus tried to resist, but Zane was stronger. The Alpha King's power pressed down on everyone, making even Marcus's most loyal warriors hesitate. One by one, the wolves of the Silver Fang pack began to press to the ground, baring throats in sign of submission. Marcus understood he had lost. He transformed back into human form, and Zane followed his example, though his hand still remained on the former Alpha's throat. You can't kill me," Marcus rasped. "Alpha law requires trial." "I know the law," Zane answered coldly, "and you'll get your trial, where you'll answer for trafficking silver poison, for selling members of your own pack, for collaborating with the Shadow Guild. Layla found all the evidence in your office. Contracts, transaction records, everything." Marcus paled. That's not—" "Silence!" Zane cut him off. He turned to Damon. "Bind him, with silver chains, and the others who participated in his crimes." Damon nodded, already pulling chains from his backpack. Zane finally released Marcus and turned, his eyes searching for Aurora. She was still in wolf form, standing a bit apart, her body trembling from exhaustion of the first transformation. "Aurora," Zane whispered, slowly approaching as if afraid to startle her. You shifted." Aurora tried to answer, but only a quiet whine escaped her throat. She didn't know how to transform back, didn't know how to control this new form. Panic began to rise, but Zane was there, dropping to his knees before her. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. "I'll help you. Close your eyes. Feel your human side. Picture yourself as you were. Call your human form." Aurora followed his instructions. Closed her eyes, pictured her face, her hands, her body, and felt the transformation begin again. This time, it was easier, faster. In a minute, she was human again, naked and shivering on the cold ground. Zane instantly removed his jacket, wrapping her in it. "You did it!" Admiration and pride rang in his voice. "Your wolf awakened." Aurora looked at her hands, still not believing. I shifted. After so many years, I finally shifted. You were right, Zane said, helping her stand. Your wolf wasn't broken. He was just sleeping, waiting for the right moment. The right moment? Aurora repeated. When you were needed most? Zane pulled her to him, embracing her tightly. When love was strong enough to awaken him? Aurora pressed against him, tears flowing down her cheeks. Tears of relief, joy, exhaustion. I was so afraid I'd lose you, she whispered. Never, Zane promised, kissing the top of her head. You're stuck with me forever. Around them, Zane's team completed the cleanup, binding prisoners, helping the wounded who hadn't participated in Marcus's crimes voluntarily. Layla approached them with a satisfied smile. Mission accomplished, Alpha. Evidence gathered, criminals detained. And, she looked at Aurora. Congratulations on your first transformation. You were magnificent. Thank you. Aurora smiled tiredly. We're sending the prisoners to the Northern Court tonight, Damon said, approaching them. The trial will be in 3 days. Enough time to gather the Council of Alphas. Zane nodded. Good. What about the other pack members? Those who didn't know about Marcus's crimes? They're asking for asylum, Damon answered. Want to join your pack, Alpha? Zane looked at Aurora. What do you say? This was your pack. Your opinion matters. Aurora thought. These wolves had banished her, rejected her. But they were also victims of Marcus, his lies and manipulations. Give them a chance, she finally said. Everyone deserves a second chance. Zane smiled, his eyes full of love and admiration. As you say, my queen. Epilogue. A new beginning. Several months later, Aurora stood on the balcony of the Northern Court, gazing at snow-covered mountains. The winter air was cold, but she wasn't freezing. Her wolf blood, finally fully awakened, warmed her from within. Much had changed over these months. Marcus Gray's trial ended with his life imprisonment in a special prison for werewolf criminals. His accomplices received various sentences depending on their level of participation. The connection with the Shadow Guild was severed, and the guild itself suffered serious losses from a joint operation by several packs. The young wolves Marcus had sold were found and returned. Not all survived, but most were now undergoing rehabilitation in safety. The Silver Fang pack was dissolved. Some wolves joined Zane's pack, others dispersed to different territories. But all received justice and a new chance. And Aurora found her place. She trained every day, learning to control her new form. Zane was a patient teacher, and with each transformation, it became easier. Her she-wolf was part of her now, not a separate entity, but an integral part of her soul. And the mate bond. Now she could feel it. A constant connection with Zane, warm and reassuring, present in the depths of her consciousness. She knew where he was, what he felt, and it was wonderful. Admiring the view? A familiar voice made her turn. Zane stood in the balcony doorway, dressed in a simple shirt and jeans, his hair tousled. He looked relaxed, happy, nothing like the formidable Alpha King others knew. With her, he was simply Zane. Her Zane. I can't get used to it, Aurora admitted, turning back to the mountains. It's so different from the forest where I lived. Do you miss your cottage? Zane embraced her from behind, pulling her close. Sometimes, Aurora answered honestly. But here I'm home, with you. You know, Zane turned her toward him, mischievous sparks dancing in his eyes. I was thinking about keeping your cottage as our private refuge, a place we can escape to when alpha duties become too heavy. I like that idea. Aurora smiled, wrapping her arms around his neck. Our secret place, just for us. Exactly. Zane leaned down, kissing her tenderly. Then he slowly pulled back and took a small box from his pocket. I have something for you. Aurora opened the box and gasped. Inside lay a ring, simple but elegant, with a silver wolf wrapping around a moonstone. Zane, I know the mate bond binds us forever, he began, dropping to one knee. But I want to make it official by human traditions, too. Aurora Greyson, will you marry me? Tears of joy welled in her eyes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and rose, sweeping her up and spinning her in the air. Their laughter echoed across the mountains. I love you, Zane whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. My queen. And I love you, Aurora replied. Thank you for finding me, for giving me a second chance. You gave me a second chance, Zane corrected. After all my lies, you're the most amazing woman I know. They stood on the balcony, embracing, watching the setting sun. The path had been long and difficult, through pain, betrayal, battles, and fear. But they had walked it together. And now, finally, they were home. Aurora was no longer an outcast, a defective she-wolf without a pack. She was the mate of an alpha king, a full werewolf who had found her place in the world. And Zane was no longer a lonely king, burdened with duties. He had found his other half, his love, his reason to smile every day. Together, they were stronger. Together, they were whole. And this was only the beginning of their story. Moonlight flooded the balcony, and somewhere in the distance, a pack howled. A song of joy, greeting their alpha and his mate. Aurora and Zane joined the howl, their voices intertwining in perfect harmony, proclaiming to the world their love and unity. The rejected moon had found her second chance, and it was more beautiful than she could have dreamed.